Welcome back to another episode of the Couch Coaches podcast. It's a good day to be recording because there was a lot of huge news. We had Derek Carr yesterday, Lamar today, Rodgers is meeting with teams. Tony Pollard gets franchise tags. Daniel Jones gets money. Seattle, I'm blanking on. Geno Smith got paid. Amazing. After his story, just before we jump into it, my brother-in-law's, they're from Seattle, so they're huge Seahawks fans. Talking about, and my brother-in-law is very optimistic. So he's like, "Oh, we're gonna win the Super Bowl because he's gonna be cheap next year." And it's like, okay, optimism's nice, but what a story that would be, because he's been nothing for 10 years, and then is great. He's getting paid. He's making $52 million next year. If they went on to win the Super Bowl and have a playoff run, that would be one of the craziest stories. They're gonna have to make a movie about him like they did about Kurt Warner. But the big news today, we were all kind of waiting to see what was going to happen. Such a weird ending to the season. Obviously wanting to get paid a lot, and Lamar and the Ravens could not come to an agreement, so they tagged him, but it was a non-exclusive tag, which means basically that a team can sign him for more money than the Ravens are willing to sign him for, and then the Ravens get 2 draft picks. So, Deacon Greg, I'm going to start with you. Thoughts on Lamar getting franchise tagged, and then also all the teams, right when that gets announced, all the teams that you would have figured to be going for Lamar all said, we're not interested, which I thought was very interesting. So thoughts on the Lamar situation?
Wow. I mean, it sounds like that the Ravens are serious on their their point. They're sticking to their guns. They're really serious. So I think it's a good thing for them to not, we said it was a non-exclusive franchise tag, which means that he could bargain with other teams, and if they choose to pick him up, the Ravens get to counter that offer, match it, or make a deal with him. If not, then they get 2 first-round draft picks. So, and then also the tag means that he's right now, they're on the hook for $32 million for him. So, I mean, both sides are playing hardball right now. Both sides are, and like you said, I think the part where Lamar is in a little bit of a rock and a hard spot is he represents himself, so he don't have an agent to go out and and speak up for him and go around to all these other teams. So he got to be trying to do 2 things at one time, and I just I don't know. He's gonna somebody will pay him though. Somebody's gonna be interested. I hope my Raiders. I hope my Raiders reach out to him. So we'll see.
Brother Bill.
I think the Lamar Jackson situation thing tells me a couple of things. Number one is that the league as a whole are willing, the owners and management are willing to wait to see the prices go down for talent. The reason why all the teams are saying we're not interested is because no one wants to set the market right now for him. And so now when someone shows interest, it's going to be less than the $250 million that he was seeking. And whatever that number is, if the Ravens opt to not match it, which in my personal opinion, it would be a mistake for them to, because where they're going to go, do they really think they're going to get a quarterback who can do what he does in that system? Can they replace that? And that's what I've been saying for weeks. It's their best chance to have a deep run in the playoffs is with someone like him at quarterback. Anything else, they would need to do something more to their offense than what they've done for the past 10 years. But I think it's changed the leverage though now, where he has less leverage. To your point, Joe, is that now he's lost some of his leverage in terms of price in the market, but with the franchise tag. So I'll have to see where that plays out. I think the other part that's going to be interesting is, and I know we'll get to the Daniel Jones situation, is now the quarterback market was set with Deshaun Watson, with Cleveland. And now it's going to be interesting to see where that sits with this free agency frenzy that's about to start.
Yeah. So what I've seen since this came out after watching all those teams kind of go, we're not interested. Obviously, they're interested. They're not interested at that price.
Right.
So that as the price comes down, what'll be interesting is if the price gets around what the Ravens have been offering, does he take it from another team or does he take it from the Ravens? I think they're throwing around the word collusion with the owners, and I could totally understand why, because they're trying to make sure that we're not doing the same thing that the dumb Browns did last year. That's the fully guaranteed 230 is not going to be a thing that we're going to continue to do. It's going to be more like, and Lamar's obviously better than Daniel Jones. Like, he's going to get a deal like Mahomes. He's going to get a deal like Josh Allen because he's that caliber of quarterback. He's not Daniel Jones. He's not Derek Carr. He's not Garoppolo. He's a one of one talent wise, which to your point, and what are they going to do with their offense? They're going to have a completely different offense because nobody can do what Lamar does, which is probably part of his leverage. But I think the owners are going, this dude and his mom need to chill out and they need to bring down their asking price. So we're going to kind of stalemate this. We're going to unify. And then once he starts negotiating, actually negotiating, not just saying, hey, I want X, and this is it. And this is also, I think, is an issue with not having without having a representation or an agent, is you don't have the agent talking to the teams, but you don't have an agent talking to him going, dude, the Ravens love you. You're like a hero in Baltimore, and they're like, this is too steep. And now that we've kind of established ourselves as being able to go out and talk with other teams, they're going, it's not going to happen. So he doesn't have that person to go to kind of talk him down. And what do you really need? What do you really want? Like, so I think just the whole thing is kind of getting a little messy. And we don't even know if he'll play on the franchise tag. Maybe his knee just doesn't get better because he was supposed to be back at Christmas and he didn't come back at Christmas. So, I mean, 32 million is nice, but 200 million is a little nicer.
Yeah, to your point though, I think when feelings get hurt, when feelings get in the way, the knee might not even be a problem. It might be I just don't want to get out on the field. And then you're saying if another team kind of matches the same offer that the Ravens offered him, would he go for that? At this point, I think he wouldn't even go back to the Ravens. He would go to another team. I mean, because you feel insulted, you feel disrespected and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's gonna be a very interesting situation.
Yeah. Jumping to Aaron Rodgers, they opened it up, and it sounds like the team has to okay who he talks to. It's kind of similarly to how Carr, for those 2 weeks that we all knew he was going to get released, and they let him talk to teams. They have to okay it with the team first, and then they allow the team to talk to the player. So the Jets are in California talking to Rodgers. They're the only team that I've heard of that is talking to Rodgers, even though you would suspect Carolina would be in on that. You would expect potentially the Texans, Miami, especially Carolina. They don't have anybody, and they lost on the Derek Carr thing, so they need a quarterback. Brother Bill, the Rodgers situation, and so let's just say, because it's the only team they're talking to is New York, give me your thoughts on Rodgers to New York. To the Jets, not to the Giants, to the Jets.
Yeah. Well, if you said the Giants, I would say then Philadelphia Eagles are celebrating, because then that just gives them the division again. Although Washington, you may have something to say about that. But in terms of the New York Jets, with their ability to run the ball, Rodgers could work, but I just don't know that New York in media and environment is a good match for his personality. I mean, if he can just go and just play ball and with no drama, that could work in terms of just the team. But aside from that, I don't see that clicking. I mean, they got the right coach. Salah's a good coach, and they can do more running the game because they don't have a quarterback. But I would be shocked if the Green Bay Packers let them go, because then where are they going to go from there? Are they going to try to get another quarter? I mean, in the time I've been watching them and they've been competitive, there have been really two quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre. The time they've been a competitive team. And so if they're willing to change that, it's like, then where do they go from here? It almost becomes up for grabs in the NFC North.
I have a different take on that. I think first of all, Rodgers has talent. Talent wins over. Rodgers can go to New York, and he will not go to New York and lay an egg. He can throw the ball. He makes receivers better. I'm telling you, those guys that he had in Green Bay, once they developed some kind of chemistry, they had a hard time because they didn't have a good offseason together and all this, and all that kind of stuff. But as that season progressed, those receivers got better, and Rodgers can put the ball out there. And he's kind of space cadet, but hey, Joe Namath was a space cadet. New York loved him. They don't care about whatever you do, how you do it. They just want you to win on the field. And Rodgers can do that, and he would be a great fit over there. They have a great defense. They play good defense. They're a quarterback away from being really making a deep run in the playoffs, and I think he could do it. As far as these other teams you talk about, Carolina and stuff, why would he want to go to? Rodgers ain't going to no Carolina. He ain't going to no Texas. At this point in his career, he don't want to play for anybody like that. But New York is very intriguing, and Green Bay has a quarterback that they drafted 3-4 years ago that's been waiting on the sideline, much like the Niners did with their quarterback situation. Green Bay has that quarterback sitting over there. And it's the same time frame that Rodgers came in and took over for Brett Favre. It's the same time frame for Jordy Love to get his. Is that his name? Love?
Yeah, Jordan Love. Yep.
Yeah, to get his shot. So they got somebody waiting in the wings over there, and they're about tired of Rodgers and his antics and everything. So he might be going to the Jets.
I could almost go along with it, except for the comparison with him and Joe Namath. Because last I checked, I can see Aaron Rodgers doing legs commercials. That's just me.
We're in a fur coat.
And the fur coat.
You never know.
Yeah, I could see New York being appealing. One, they're a strong team. I mean, the Jets are a much stronger team than any of the other teams I mentioned. And I could also see a thing where, depending on what Rodgers wants to do after he's done playing football, being in New York is wherever he's going to do. Being in New York, where all the attention is probably a good place to start. You just wonder though because it's such a weird situation, because he's always talking about retirement, which then, so the Jets, I would think it would be a situation under normal circumstances where it would be almost like the Seahawks and the Broncos, where the Broncos just send the Seahawks like all kinds of stuff, and then they get the quarterback. But Rodgers, because he's been talking about retirement for 3 years, the Jets can go, well, we'll give you a second, like we'll give you a first and a second, or we'll give you a first this year, or we'll give you 2/3. Like in a normal situation, you would think that the team that they were going to is going to lose a whole bunch of assets that make them good. And I don't know if that's necessarily the case in this, because I'm sure the Packers and their fans are tired of him always talking about retirement. They can see Jordan Love is not going to be, he's not going to be the third person in this Favre Rodgers line of quarterbacking, but he could be okay. And I think the division is going to be Minnesota's regardless, because the DC they just picked up, the old Miami coach, the guy that's suing the league. He was with Pittsburgh. I'm completely blanking. Brian Flores. That dude is a really good DC, and I think Minnesota is going to be where they're going to be hitting a little harder on the defensive end of the ball, take a little pressure off of Cousins, who obviously is not good in prime time and in the playoffs. That's going to be a different team, and I think Rodgers going into the East, let's just say he goes to the Jets. That's a really tough division too. You got to play Buffalo. New England will be better because they have an actual OC this year, and Miami. Remember, Miami just picked up Vic Fangio. Miami's going to be a nightmare of a team to face, because their offense is going to be humming and their defense is going to be killer. Miami's a total sleeper for me as of now going into next year, as long as Tua doesn't turn into a vegetable on the field because he keeps getting his head slammed.
Don't sleep on the Detroit Lions in the NFC North.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I mean that's a Goff, especially Goff at home, man. Goff is he looks like a dude that went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. Yeah, that's I didn't don't want to disrespect the Lions because they do. They're a tough team. Um, thoughts on Daniel Jones? They he's basically getting $40 million for 4 years. They didn't give him the 5th year option at the end of last year or the beginning of this year, however you want to look at it. And then he had one okay year. They went 500, and now he's getting $40 million a year. So thoughts, if you were a Giants fan, thoughts on Brother Bill, I'll start with you. Thoughts on Daniel Jones's new contract and Saquon getting franchise tagged.
It's the other part of that that would concern me as a Giants fan, and that is, nothing against Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones, 4 years, 160 million. Saquon Barkley, 10 million. Nonsense with a franchise tag. That seems uneven to me because Saquon Barkley healthy, without him, that Giants offense is mediocre at best.
Absolutely.
So it seems uneven to me. For as talented as Daniel Jones could be with Saquon Barkley healthy, you know what you have. You have a known talent, and you put the ball in his hands, things just happen. And so that's the part surprise. So I don't know what that's going to mean for them in terms of being able to compete in the division. But as a fan, I'm scratching my head because then you have to ask yourself, what does that say to the rest of the team? How hard is Barkley? I mean, does he feel, slighted? Is he going to play hard for the year? You just don't know now what effect that's going to have when it comes time to play ball in the season in that division.
Big Greg.
Yeah, I agree with Brother Bill. I mean, but we know it's a quarterback-driven league. Quarterbacks are getting paid. I mean, and they're not that good. We don't want to mention Derek Carr in this conversation, but they quarterbacks are getting paid. And to your point, you were saying that you don't know how hard he's going to run. He still wants his money. So you can't, as a running back, you can't go out there and lay an egg because you're not going to get your money. Mm-hmm. So you still got to go to work, whether So that's the dilemma that these guys have. Like when they franchise these running backs, but that's the market for a running back. The price for a running back ain't that high. But I totally agree with your point. I mean, he is the backbone of that organization, of the offense. He makes the offense go, and it don't seem fair, but it's just what it is, man. That's a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, I never heard any details about what he was looking for. I mean, obviously, he's going to put out. He's looking for a big fat contract, but I think there's contracts where you see these guys like Zeke. You sign a big fat contract, and like running backs are there's not many Frank Gores anymore where they're just this workhorse for like 12 years. They signed him really. I mean, it's not like he's not getting paid. They signed him. Who was he? The number 2 pick, number 3 pick when he got drafted. So he hasn't been poor, but that big fat second contract for a running back, you don't see that very often. And again, we were talking before we started, I was surprised in seeing that Saquon got tagged and Pollard got tagged with the Cowboys. I'm surprised that I didn't think the running back market was so low. There's only $10 million. I mean, wouldn't you want to pay Saquon $10 million a year?
You're going to do that. The Raiders are going to do the same thing with Josh Jacobs. He's going to get a franchise tag. That's just what they do with the running backs now.
Yeah, yeah, and it sucks because the running backs. I mean, it's a pretty small window because it's especially if they use them like they use Jacobs and like they use Saquon, where they use them all the time. I mean, they use them like almost like an old school way of using a running back, where they're in there the whole game. And it's big dudes hitting big dudes. It's a matter of time before a knee or an ankle or a hip or a hamstring or something.
And there's the answer to your question. That's why they don't want to pay him, because they know it's just because a matter of time.
Yeah. Yeah. So you brought up Carr and his 37.5 a year, something like that, 38 a year. He still snuck in that no trade clause, so he's smart. Take a little less money. Get that no trade clause in there so you don't get stuck in who knows where.
Home.
home. Yeah, go back to Bakersfield. So thoughts on that division. So maybe I seem to be the only person thinking this as I'm talking to different friends and stuff about this. But if I were Carr, I would have picked Carolina. Because the coaching staff and they have some pretty good weapons on offense, and they had a pretty strong defense towards the end of the year. And it's a horrible division. That division's going to suck next year. So basically right now, unless something happens, whatever team Carr went to was probably going to be the one that wins the division. Tampa's going to be terrible. Carolina doesn't have a quarterback. Atlanta's terrible. And then it's Carr's in New Orleans, who has a good defense. So Deacon Greg, I'm going to start with you. Just thoughts on the division, and am I off on thinking that I would have picked Carolina over New Orleans, or is New Orleans more appealing and I'm just not thinking the right way about it?
Well, you have to remember that what's the coach at in New Orleans? That's the coach that drafted Carr, that for the Raiders, Allen. So there's a familiarity there, and he went and talked to them earlier in the season. We know the Raiders gave him permission, so I think all that stuff was being under wraps all the time. That was going to be, if he didn't go to the Jets, he was definitely going to New Orleans. And that division is wide open. No more Brady. Just that division. So they're gonna almost guaranteed to make the playoffs. He's playing in a dome. He's playing in so I think that's a good fit for him. But me as a Raider fan, and him as an I told you he can win some games, but you ain't going too deep in the playoffs with Carr. You're not going there. If you want to win some games, that he might get you there. You ain't going into no deep run in the playoffs with him.
Brother Bill.
I think of those 4 teams, the Saints is the best choice for him because of their defense. And in a division like that, where you could win in that division putting up 21 points. And that's just how futile those teams are, right? And so he doesn't have to be the one to light it up. If they run the ball with any consistency, which even under Sean Payton, except for the Super Bowl year, they just haven't historically done, he doesn't have to do a lot. But I think the key for them is going to be, and then my bigger question is, what does that say to Jameis Winston, who's their starter? He's going to come.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, never mind. Okay, so he answered that.
Matter of fact, I heard he's supposed to come visit the Raiders. I heard that.
Oh, please.
I'm serious. I heard that. That's what I heard.
Oh man, that'd be a dream come true.
Yeah.
Not saying that we want him, but he's supposed to visit.
Yeah. I think of those 4 teams, I think the Saints was his best option in that division to do something.
Yeah,
what they'll do, don't know.
Yeah, I do think warm weather. I mean, the idea of him being in cold weather when his numbers in cold weather are horrific. You're like, if you go to the Jets, you're dumb. So being in the South, I mean, it's either indoors or he's playing outdoors and it's warm. So it should be. I mean, this should be a good version of Derek, whatever that is. There should be a good version of him. John Morant. So because John Morant he's always in the paper. Because they're putting such an emphasis on his dad kind of always hanging out and always kind of being around, and it's seeming like that's a kind of a not so much of a father-son dynamic, but like their friends dynamic or whatever. So if John Morant's your kid and his thing where he went over to somebody's house and flashed the gun, that was on a road trip, which means he had people that were willing to go with him in the car in a city that they're not from and go drive by somebody's house with a gun that I don't know how the gun got there. I don't know if they drove up and met him, and the whole situation is weird. So you have that situation. You have the situation with somebody disrespecting his mom at a shoe store or something like that, and all his friends came in and they had to call security and all this stuff to get him out. Flashed his gun on Instagram at a strip club at like 5 a.m. I think that's it. Is that the last thing, or is there more? Is there something else I'm not remembering, because he's got a lot of stuff? But if you're his dad, what do you say, Brother Bill? If this is your kid, what do you say to Ja? Ja, what?
You almost have to say, do you want to win or not? Because if you aren't To me, that's immaturity. At that age, to be, when I always talk, when I talk to close friends, I say, never put yourself in a situation that can lead to trouble on the job, because you got to get paid. Now, sure, that was on a road trip, but remember what I said 2 weeks ago about the Grizzlies? Fun to watch, but drama. This is perfect example of a team that's talented, but they aren't ready. They aren't a championship team up here, mentally where it matters. They just aren't there yet. So if I'm your dad, so if I'm his dad, his son, here's a fork in the road. You got to make a decision like today, right? What are you going to do with this? Because this story is going to blow over at some point. But if you want to win, these kind of things just can't happen. You've got to focus on handling your business in your career. And your career is the NBA, and if it means cutting some friends loose or whatever you got to do to fix your personal life, get that stuff straight like today. Because it's hard to win a championship, and if you want to take advantage of this window, you've got to take care of yourself and get your head straight today.
Deacon Greg.
Well, I'll just say his dad needs to be his dad and not his homeboy.
Yep.
He runs around like he's part of the posse too, so I don't know if that's going to be any advice coming from him.
He brought the gun.
Yeah. The fact that even talking about his dad at the games, to me, it's like, what does that have to do with basketball? It always strikes me that likes to be back to the Sacramento Kings and Doug Christie. His wife was always there at the court, and every time he scored a basket, he'd make some gesture to her, and that became a story. I'm like, dude, you grown man, just play the ball. Don't let your wife be the story, man. Just take care of your business and play ball.
Like Patrick Mahomes' brother. That knucklehead, jeez. Yeah, it's like he's got kind of a LeVar Ball feel. Yeah. But the LeBall kids are, I mean, except the kid stole sunglasses in China or Japan or something like that. But I mean, he was like 16. But his kids seem on point. But it kind of has that kind of feel of a spotlight, like the dad kind of loving the spotlight sort of thing, which I could, it's probably hard to not enjoy it a little bit, watching your kid go out there and be very, be one of the top players and get a bunch of attention. I'm wondering, talking about winning, you wonder how important winning is. Like when you got $100 million in the bank and you're a pro athlete and you are one of the top, like maybe winning's not as big of a deal as you would hope it would be as a sports fan.
I think winning is important, but like you said, it's an immaturity factor. The whole team is young. And then and Memphis, that city of Memphis is kind of like they're out, they like to party up there. So it's a whole environment going together. But speaking of winning, did any of you guys watch that Laker Warrior game last week? I was just wondering.
Now, where is that on our topics for tonight? I thought that was going to be next week.
Yeah, that was good. That was good. I'm checking the Warriors score.
Yeah, they're going to lose again tonight at OKC, and I think Deacon Greg is onto something. And sure, it's one thing to say, yeah, it's another road loss, but it's the way that they're losing the games with careless turnovers, unforced turnovers, and that's if I'm Coach Carr is driving me nuts because it's a pattern with them. And what I don't understand is why is it? I mean, on the road, you're supposed championship teams on the road. That's when they're more focused and more dialed in. There's a time where you had teams that were called road warriors because they amped it up when they went on the road. I'm sure they had the home crowd and they handled business, but on the road, it was almost like they would go into that arena or that stadium, football, basketball, name, with a chip on their shoulder. And I just don't see that with this Warrior team. Even with everyone back, with Steph back, I mean, Clay's been playing well, Drummond, but the slow.
Oh, you froze. I didn't, Greg. Did you watch the game?
Oh,
everybody froze. Are you back?
What happened?
Everybody froze.
Oh.
We're good. We're good now.
We're good. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a thing with the Warriors it's one of those things where you saw it a lot when we had KD. It's a good and bad thing. When you know that you can really turn it on, and it's like a switch you turn on and off. Do you always turn it on knowing you can supposedly turn it on later? I think that has to be some kind of an issue with the Warriors, where they've been doing this. They've had such a good run that I could see them getting a little lackadaisical. What's funny is like they win all the games at home and lose all the games on the road. That's the crazy. It's like it's just win on the road, win at home, lose on the road. It's nuts. Like their winning percentage is like it's like 50-50. They're 500 and it's home games and road games. That's
that would get you beat in the playoffs, because there's going to be a point where you're going to be coming up against better teams in the playoffs who are poised mentally to win on the road. I'm talking about the Phoenix Suns. I mean, that's KD is KD. Sure, you knew that, but between him, Devin Booker, and those guys and shooters that they have, if they keep playing defense the way they are, I'm not even talking about Chris Paul, I'm just talking about the rest of the team. I may have to put an asterisk by the Warriors coming out of the West.
You better put it by it. Have you paid attention to Denver at all?
Denver, I watch them, but you know what though? I'm not sold on Denver, because as good as the Joker is, I'm not sold on their defense. I put them and Dallas in the same category. They can put up some points. They shoot a ton of threes. Nope. I would say right now for the West, I'm not even talking about the Kings yet. No, they're ready. I would say between Phoenix and the Dubs, and then I'll just pencil in. I thought about the Clippers, but they're not going to make it. Lakers, they might make that 10 spot after all. We'll see. So they'll get to play in a one play-in game. But sure, make a long question short. I don't think Denver. I can't see them coming out of the West. Just can't see it.
All right.
Man,
you heard it here first.
Right.
I hope Phoenix and Dallas play a series.
What is it about Denver you think makes them come out of the West?
I don't know what you have been missing. They play defense. They're efficient on offense. They got the best record in the West. Don't you know that? They're like 44 and they have they're the number one seed in the West.
But even that record, I mean, as tough as the West is, I mean, they're first by what, maybe 2 games. So I mean, you got a log jam of like the first 5 teams, and you got a log jam at the bottom. So I don't see them as being head and shoulders above all the other teams. They just happen to have the best record just because of wins and losses. But from its overall talent execution, I can't see them being that much better.
That number one seed gives you home court advantage, and just like you said earlier, your Warriors are not good on the road, and they got to go to Mile High, and it's going to be a letdown in Mile High.
Well, if they were to go, they wouldn't. Depending on how they're seeded, they might not have to face them until the conference, until the conference championship. If whoever the number one seed is, the Warriors, if they're the 4th seed, they depend on what happens with the other, they might have to see them until the conference finals. But the main thing is Warriors, that they got to get that 4th seed.
Yeah. Well, we got to check we got a month. We got a month to get in. So we have a minute left before this thing switches off. So hopefully next week we'll have some more clarity on what's going on with Lamar. And then we'll have more basketball games we can talk about. I will this week I will pay more attention to Denver, but I still don't.
All right. I'm
Actually,
telling you guys.
You're right. Denver's they're 7 games up ahead of Memphis. So I was looking at Memphis, Sacramento, and Phoenix. They're the ones that are separated 2 games apart. Yeah, Denver. Okay.
Now you're starting to pay attention.
Okay, Nuggets.
All right. On that note, we will see you guys next week.